We're now on the bottom of Daf Memvav Amid Aleph, about to turn to Memvav Amid Beis. And you may recall that Rabbah responds to Abaye, Lola Didi Kasha, Velole Rav Chizda Kasha, Lididi Lo Kasha. And now we're on the last line of Memvav Amid Aleph. Sofo Kitri Loso. The hakrav of the Avarim that were left over until the following night or the following morning have the same din as tchilaso, as the hakravas hatomid itself. And therefore, as far as hakrava betuma is the tchilaso, meaning the shchita the zrika sadam bar midchei tuma, who will override the din of tuma, and that we derive from the pasuk b'moado. Sofo, the hakravas evarim, which is the end of the process of the karman, nami dochi, it also overrides the issue of hakrav b'tumah. However, as far as Shabbos is concerned, you want to override the Shabbos, is tchilaso lav bar midchei Shabbos. The tamid that has evarim shenosru until the boker of Yom Shabbos. So shchita and zrikas dam lav bar midchei Shabbos. We would not be docha Shabbos, meaning the entire process. Let's say, for example, in the Talmud Shel Ben Arbaim on Friday, we would require that all the malachos, the shchita and the zrika, although zrika is not a malacha, but it's also min rabbanan, would take place before Shabbos. And the Talmud, in terms of its man shchita, etc., of Friday is on Erev Shabbos, Ben Arbaim, even though the dam is not, and even the dam, is not nizrak on Shabbos, as Rashi points out, because if the dam would not be nizrak before Shabbos, then it's possible b'shkiyas achama. Dam nifsal b'shkiyas achama. So everything has to be done on Erev Shabbos, and therefore the Evarim themselves would not be karev on the Mizbeach on Shabbos. Is sofo nami lo dachi. In other words, those Evarim that were left over going into Shabbos from Erev Shabbos would not be docha the Shabbos. So you have no kasha Abaye, because Rabbi is saying I'm being very consistent. In the case of Tumah, it's sofo kitchilaso, and basically even in the case of Shabbos, it's going to be sofo kitchilaso, because with regard to the carbon of Erev Shabbos, we have to be consistent, and no part of that avod of the carbon could be done on Shabbos, neither the shchita or the zrika, and we're talking about together the Talmud Shel Ben Arbaim on a Friday, nor the akravas evarim shenosru, and the Rav Chizda nami lo kosher. In other words, Rav is being intellectually honest, and he's showing that the objection of Abaye to Rav Chizda is also not a valid objection. And why is that so? Sofo kitchilaso. And we're going to be consistent. It's just that Rav Chizda does not have this yisod, this fundamental principle, that hakravas evarim depends upon the carbon itself. But nevertheless, even according to Rav Chizda, there's a logical reason to distinguish between Shabbos and Tumah. You say, Abaye, that you have to be consistent. Well, here's the difference between the two. Shabbos the hutrahi bit tzibur, etc., etc., whereas Tumah is the chuya bit tzibur. So let's explain. Shabbos the hutrahi ba'avodas hakarbanos bit tzibur. In other words, together, the definition of the halach that karbanos tzibur are brought on Shabbos, and we override the Shabbos. That means the Torah was matter, completely matter the Isur of Hakrava on Shabbos. Therefore, when we get to the Hakrava Seivarim that were left over into Shabbos, Nami Dofi, they should also override the Shabbos, because the Torah was matter completely Hakravas Karman Tzibur, meaning a time-bound Karman on Shabbos. But Tumah, the Torah wasn't matir Tumah, but rather the Chuyei B'tzibur, No, it's the definition, the geder of the Allah, the korban tzibur are brought bituma. It's not because the Torah was mated Isur lahakar bituma. The Torah said the chuya. The Torah said the akrova of these karbanos can be dolcha the Isur of akrova bituma. But bekoshi hutalem Isur. It was very difficult because they're really overriding the Isur of akrovas karbanos bituma. And therefore, whatever we can do to avoid this, we're going to avoid this. It's therefore tchilaso. There's the shchita and the zrika, the ikar kapara. That's the essence of the kapara. What generates the kapara? What's critical to the kapara? It's shchita leading up to zrika. Dachi, that would be override. In other words, we look aside as far as the Isra Akrav B'tum is concerned, for the sake of the Kaparas HaKarbon, its essence, but Sofa, which means Akravas Eivarim, the Lavika Kapara, the Kapara is not dependent upon Akravas Eivarim. Even if the Eivarim, for example, get lost or they contract Tumah, we still have a Kaparas HaKarbon based on the Avodas Hadam that culminates with Zrika. Is Lo Dochi, would not be Dochi, would not override the Isur of Hakrava B'Tumah. And the Gemara later on, we're not up to this yet on Daf Nun, is going to establish that Ein Dechias HaTumah Karbanis Tluya V'Karbanis Tzibur. It's not really, if you look at this Gemara, you get the impression that overriding Tumah is dependent upon the status of the Karban as either that of a Yachid or that of a Tzibur, but rather Kol Karban Shekavua Lozman, if it has a time element that's urgent, it doesn't matter one bit whether it's a carbon tzibur or a carbon yachid, it's dochet tumah. A carbon that's not kavua lozman, even if it would be a carbon tzibur, is ein a dochet satum. And now the Gemara goes back at this point to the din of the eish, of the fire that we take from the Mizbeach HaChitzon for the purpose of Hadlakas HaMenorah, for the purpose of Haktoras HaKtores. I'm not sure exactly. The Masechet here mentions the Haktorah of Yoma Kippurim. I don't think it has to be Daf Yoma Kippurim. Even the Ketores that was brought daily, twice daily in the Heichal and the Mizbeach HaPnimi, also the Eish and the Gecholim were taken from the Mizbeach HaChitzon. In any event, with regard to the Mizbeach HaChitzon, we have an Isur Kibui. The Pasuk says, Vayikra Vav, Pasuk Vav, Eish Tamid Tukar al Mizbeach Lo Sichbeh. And the Sifra, the Torah's Kohanim, darshans that Nosna Torah Isur Lo Saseh B'Kibui Eish HaMizbeach. If you put out the fire on the Mizbeach, you violate a lotus. And now the Gemara wants to know, does that lotus apply? There's going to be a machlokes by Verava in a case of a fire that we take off the Mizbeach, and we need that fire, which is coming out of the Gecholim, out of the what's left of the logs of wood, for the purpose of Adlokas HaMenorah, for the purpose of Haktoras HaKtores. Again, he mentions Yom Kippur. I'm not sure exactly why he mentions Yom Kippur. In any event, is there an Isur Kibui even after you removed the Eish from the Mizbeach? And now we're going to present a machlokes on this exact question. Itmar, Amachabe Eish, if he extinguishes the Eish, the Gecholim, that were taken off the Mizbeach HaChitzon for the Machta that the Kohen Gadol used to be Makriv inside the Kodesh Kadosh and the Ketores on Yom Kippur. And for that matter, if we took the Gecholim off to be Makriv the Ketores inside the Heichal, in the Mizbeach HaPnimi on a daily basis, twice daily, or Nitla Me'am Mizbeach, they took from the Mizbeach HaChitzon, the Gecholim, which has a fire attached in order to be Madlik the Menorah. And now he was Machaber the Eish. By Omar Chayev, he gets Malchus for violating the Lavalo Sifba, and Rav Amar Potter. The Gemara says the following: the Chavye Barosh HaMizbeach Le'amalo Pligi the chayav. If a person puts out a fire when the coals are on top of the mizbeach, that's exactly what is a violation of the law of eish tamid tukal mizbeach lo tichba. It's on the mizbeach. Certainly, it's chayav. Ki pligi, where's the machlok sabai v'rova? That's the achte ha'ara v'chabye. He took the gecholim off the mizbeach and he placed them on the rispas ha'azor on the ground, and then he puts the fire out. And abayo machayv, this appella, the eish is not on the mizbeach; it came from the mizbeach, and Abai claims eish hamizbeach. Now, really, in what sense is it the eish hamizbeach? It's not physically there. In fact, now the eish is going on to a different mizbeach, or in the case of the kodesh kadoshim, it's not going on to any mizbeach. So Rav Amar Potter gave it to natka. Once you take the eish, you cut it off from the mizbeach, you put it down on the ground. Nitka, you have disconnected it, separated it from any shaykhs to the mizbeach, and therefore it's not considered eish hamizbeach, and there's no lava lo sichta. So the Gemara clarifies, wait a minute, we have a statement of Rav Nachman. Elohadi Omar Rav Nachman Omar Rabba bar Avua. Hamorid gacheles me'al gabi hamizbeach v'kibo chayav. Which sounds like Rav Nachman is agreeing in this machlok. He's taking sides. He's agreeing with Abaye that even after the gacheles was removed from the mizbeach, there's still a lav of lo sichbeh. Ke Abaye. Now the Gemara is not very happy with that because we have a principle that machlokas Abaye v'Rava we pass in like Rava, and in a machlok between Rav Nachman and his adversary, so to speak, we paskin like Rav Nachman. So this is a very strange thing that Rav Nachman be reiterating the position of Abaye, and we paskin like Rav Nachman, which means we paskin like Abaye against Rav. So Gemara says no. Afilu tema, you could say that Rabba bar Avu in the name of Rav Nachman can be reconciled even with Rava Kirava, but rather they're two different cases that they're addressing. The case that Abai and Rava are arguing about and addressing is not the same as that of Rav Nachman. Chasam, in the case of Rav Nachman, the eish was cut off from the mizbeach and he put it on the ground. But lo intik limitzvasa, he was talking about a case where the eish was not being taken off the mizbeach for the purpose of another mitzvah to be placed on a different mizbeach, or in the case of Kodesh Kadoshim. And therefore, even though he's removed the eish from the mizbeach, it hasn't changed and lost its status as eish hamizbeach. And if even Rava would agree that he be chayav for kibud, where does Rava disagree with Abaye? That's a case of intika limitzvasa, that they deliberately took the eish off the mizbeach in order to put the ketoris on the eish, or put the eish onto the mizbach hapnimi, or to be madlik the neros inside the heichal. That's called nutka ha'eish lemitzvah. And once it was designated now for a new mitzvah off the mizbeach, I mean outside the mizbeach hachitzon, therefore Rava claims it's not called eish hamizbeach. There's no chiyuv of kibui on that eish. Ikar diamri, the Gemara now offers an alternative explanation of the machlok shin Abai v'Rava. The achte ha'ara v'kavye, if they took the eish off the mizbeach and they put it down on the ground on the ritzvas hazorah, then kuli alma lo pligi, meaning even Abaye would agree to potter. Why? Because the eish is no longer eish hamizbeach once it's on the ritzvas hazorah. Ki pligi, whereas the machlok is the kavye beroshal shel mizbeach. Interesting. Why beroshal shel mizbeach does it lose its status as the eish hamizbeach? The answer is he took it off the maracha. It's still on the Rosh HaMizbeach, but it's not on the fire itself. It's a Omer, nevertheless chayav Eish HaMizbeach. Right? It didn't go off the Mizbeach, not even for a split second. But Rav Amar Potter came into Nitka, it was taken off the Maracha, Nitka. It's completely disconnected. It has no shaykhs to the Mizbeach. It's not considered Eish HaMizbeach, and there's no chiyuv of kibud. So the Gemara clarifies, Eloha, the Omer of Nachman, Omar Rav Marvua, Hamorid, Gacheles Me'al-Gabi Mizbeach V'Kiba, Chayav. Kiman lo kabai v'lo karam. According to this second Lishna, the Lishna Basudik and the Amri, Abai v'Rava both concede, it's a unanimous position, that once you take the Eish off the Mizbeach, there's no longer a chiyuv for Machaba. So how could Rav Nachman say that even though a Morid Gacheles Me'al-Gabi Mizbeach, nevertheless, he's chayav for kibud? That's against everyone in the second Lishna. And the Gemara answers that we're going to suggest that Rabbi Bar Avua, in the name of Nachman, agrees to both Abai and Rava, and they're talking about a case that's different than Abai and Rava. Awesome, in the case of Rav Nachman, lo intik lemitzvah sa. He took off the Eish from the Mizbeach, but it's not designated for another mitzvah, for another Mizbeach. And therefore, even after it's removed from the Mizbeach, it's still considered Eish HaMizbeach, Hacha. But in the case that Abai and Rava are arguing about, the Eish was taken out of the Mizbeach for a purpose, in order to use it for the Ketores, or to be Madlik the Neros of the Menorah, is integral mitzvah. Now it's been cut off from the Mizbeach for the purpose of a different mitzvah. It no longer is shaykh to the Mizbeach. It's no longer defined and categorized as Eish HaMizbeach, and therefore he's not chayav for kibud. Adron Alecha Paraf Bekalfi, and Be'ezer Hashem, tomorrow we begin the 5th perek, Hotziulo Es Hakach. So I wish you all a great day.